Hi boys and girls, welcome to Chapter 7, Lesson 5. This is our last lesson in Chapter 7, so hopefully you've been reviewing your notes and rewatching lessons. The test will be coming soon. Our topic today is solve and write division equations. The first thing we're going to talk about are the steps to solve equations, and they're exactly what we learned last lesson. Steps to solve equations. And I'm just going to write over here that they're the same steps 1 through 4 as Lesson 4 notes. Same steps. One through 4, and then we can put Lesson 4 notes. Okay, we're going to review those steps today, but here they are. Number 1 is find the variable. How do you do that? Pretty easy, it's just the letter. Step 2, you figure out what's happening to the letter, what's happening to your variable. Step 3, you undo what's happening to your variable using the inverse operation, and you have to do that to both sides. That's the real key to solving equations and showing your work properly. You have to show that you're doing the same thing, keeping that equation, that scale balanced. And then the last step is check by plugging your solution into the original equation. It should work. Okay. All right, let's look at some division equations. So I'm going to write here, solve division equations. The trickiest part I think that kids have with solving division equations is seeing that line as divide. This line, this is what I'm talking about. Here's our equation. A over 3 equals 7. This line right here, A over 3, that line means divide. Okay, we've talked about that a bunch. We've talked about different ways of showing division. As you move on in math, this is the most common way that you're going to see division going forward, is just a line. All right, so let's walk through this equation following our steps. So over here, I'm going to rewrite our equation. A over 3 equals 7. So step 1, I'm going to write the steps and then walk through them at the same time. So step 1, find the variable. How do we do that? It's the letter. We look for the letter. Well, there it is, A. That's our variable. Step 2. Step 2 is we look at the variable and we figure out what's happening to the variable. What is happening to the variable? I'll abbreviate with a V. What is happening to the variable? Well, here's my variable. Again, that line means divide. A is being divided by 3. That's what's happening to the variable. So I'm going to write that down. What's happening to the variable? Being divided by 3. It's being divided by 3. That's what's happening to it. Okay, step 3. To undo divide, that's what we're going to do next. But we have to do that to both sides. So I'm going to write it right here. 3. To undo divide by 3, to undo divide by 3, we are going to multiply both sides by 3. And this is the multiplication property of equality right there. We're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 3. Okay, so I'll write that. Multiplication property of, and I'll abbreviate it, I'm going to say capital E for equality. To undo divide by 3, that's what's happening here. We're going to multiply both sides by 3, and that is the multiplication property of equality. So, again, most kids, the biggest confusion they have is with this notation. That means divide by 3. Now, how would I show being that I want to multiply both sides by 3? There's a lot of different ways I could do it. I could use an x for multiply by 3, but again, the confusion with using x is that variables, x is an often used variable. So I'm not going to use x. I could use a dot. I could use an x. I'm just not going to. Could use a dot. But what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to actually use parentheses. A number right next to a parenthesis means they're being multiplied. So that notation right there means that I'm multiplying this side by 3. And I'm going to multiply this side by 3 too. Something with a parenthesis right next to it always means multiply. So this is showing I'm multiplying this side of the equation by 3. I'm multiplying this side of the equation by 3. Over here on this side of the equation, I've got 3 over 3, which turns into 1. 1a is the same as a. So on this side of the equation, I wind up with a. And on this side, I wind up with 7 times 3, which is 21. I think my answer is 21. Okay, but the last step is check by plug solution into original equation. Plug the solution into the original equation. So if I put in 21 right here, 21 divided by 3, I do get 7. So it worked. 21 divided by 3 equals 7. There's my check. All right, so I'm going to go back and highlight something here. I'm going to highlight multiply by 3, multiply by 3. That is our big idea with solving division equations. To undo it, we multiply both sides by the same amount. We've got to use this multiplication property of equality. Okay, so again, the steps for solving an equation are always the same 4 steps. Find the variable, what's happening to the variable, undo what's happening to the variable, but you got to do that to both sides. Keep that scale balanced so it's not, doesn't get out of balance. All right, we're going to look at one more example where it just looks weird, but it really is the same exact thing that we've been doing. I'm going to write it over here. Take a look at this. B over 3/4 equals 20. It just looks weird. Not used to seeing something like that. I'm going to write it over here. B over 3/4 equals 20. All right, let's walk through our steps with this equation right here. Number 1, what's the variable? Variable is b. Step 2, what's happening to the variable? It's being divided by 3/4. Or step 2, what's happening to it? Being divided by 3/4. Step 3, we are going to undo divide by 3/4. How do I undo dividing by 3/4? I'm going to multiply by 3/4. So that would look like this. Again, there are a lot of ways I could show this, but I am going to use parentheses. I'm going to multiply this side of the equation by 3/4, and on this side, I'm actually going to show it like this. I'm going to use that x. Again, I could have used parentheses, I could have used a dot, but right here is our multiplication property of equality. We're showing we're doing the same thing to both sides. Multiply by 3/4, multiply by 3/4. We're going to keep that thing balanced. It's going to stay balanced. 3/4 over 3/4 turns into 1, which makes this side turn into b. Now, over here, we got to jump back to how do we multiply with whole numbers and fractions. So over here, 20 times 3/4, I got to make that a whole number. So 20 over 1 times 3/4. I could multiply numerators over multiplying denominators, but I'm going to try to simplify first, and I can. 4 and 20. 4 is a common factor of both of those. And again, you need a number on the bottom and a number on the top. You need a denominator and a numerator to simplify. How many 4s go into 4? 1. How many 4s go into 20? 5. Now I've got some easier numbers to work with. I've got 5 times 3 is 15. Over 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer, or at least I believe my answer, is 15. B equals 15. So now how do I check that? Well, to check that, I put in 15 into the original equation. And to make this easier, and also so I could check it with a calculator, I could change this to 0.75. Okay, if you don't recognize that as 0.75, you could do 3 divided by 4 and get 0.75. So if I put in 15 divided by 0.75 on my calculator, I divide that, I type it in, and I get 20. So there is my check. Plug my answer back into my original equation, and it worked. All right, so this is what your work should look like today. Okay, showing that you're doing the same thing to both sides. Common theme with solving equations this unit. That's what your work should look like. Here's our other example. You're showing that you're doing the same thing to both sides, and also don't forget the check. Okay, here was our check on the first example, and here was our check on the second example. Take our answer, take your solution, put it back into the original equation, and see if it works. Okay, that does it for Lesson 5. Here is Hidden Treasure for Lesson 5. It's solving that puzzle right there. You can win if you have all the notes. Your workbook page is done, and you can solve that puzzle. Again, this is the last lesson in Chapter 7. Get on reviewing your notes, be going back through your notes, rewatching lessons you don't understand, doing self-check quizzes in ConnectEd, all that stuff. Workbook pages, getting ready for Chapter 7 test. I'll tell you when that is in class. It's soon. All right, next time you see me, I'll be talking about Chapter 8. Talk to you soon.